All right, welcome everyone. This is Tonson Fairmont with the Brilliance in Commerce and House of Freedom Trust webinar for September 5th, 2018. We are moving into a phase transition between the ages, as everyone knows. The ending of a very long, very interesting and educational dark age, and the overlapping into a new golden age. And in this phase transition, there are types of education for learning how to administer one's affairs in the natural way, in tune with universal law and natural law. That's why the International Natural Law Trust is in vogue and is a wave of the future. We are moving into a future of prosperity, of enlightenment, of freedom from crime on this planet, freedom from war, freedom from pollution and poverty and sickness and everything else that has plagued mankind in the Dark Ages, while the lessons of karma, the lessons of all the great religions and all the great teachings and philosophies are coming to fruition. So, without further ado, we'll go on into what Brilliance in Commerce is about, a project of La Verite, House of Freedom International Natural Law Trust, Liberty Debt Elimination System, affiliations and special offers include wealth building systems, credit repair, gold purchasing concierge, offshore asset protection, Monaco Management Group, wealth management, cryptocurrencies, and so on. The International Natural Law Trust is what presumably you're here for today. The other topics we'll cover at different times. There will be a special program on the Hollow Earth Network this Thursday on the Trust, and also the following Thursday, September 13th, on the Liberty Debt Elimination System. But for today, we're covering the International Natural Law Trust with our illustrious trust writer, founder of House of Freedom, and consultant extraordinaire, Randall. So today's September 5th, and then our next webinar is scheduled for October 10th, 2018. For those listening and would like to write it down and don't have any contact, we will give you contact points. We prefer that you go through your affiliate. If you have an affiliate, a referring affiliate, there is a generic link, which is houseoffreedomtrust.com with dashes between each of the words. And then we have our newsletter, the Brilliance in Commerce newsletter, which comes out irregularly, 2 or 3 times a month. And that is subscribable at houseoffreedomtrust.com with dashes between each of the words. Then click on more, and then on newsletter sign up. Or actually, I think we have newsletter sign up directly shown in the menu now. And for those who need a phone number, 360-200-7521. That's our general company number, 360-200-7521 in the United States. My name is Tonson Fairmont. I'm the founder, and I'm a member of the board of advisors of Monaco Management Group. I've been a speaker and at offshore investment seminars and radio shows and many other conference calls and events throughout the years, and author of Sovereignty, Consciousness, and Cosmic Renaissance. We're learning about the benefits and the procedures, the protocols, the modus operandi of the International Natural Law Trust, previously a best-kept secret of the super rich. Peaceful people are enjoying protected status in state-of-the-art sovereign trusts, and this is the best source of guidance for that. For generations, a few thousand people worldwide have been quietly successful in what others said is impossible. Randall Hillner is our head of the trust department and founder of House of Freedom Trust, founder of White Light Unlimited, trustee of One People's Public Trust, creator of the International Natural Law Trusts. So, we are going into the topic today of the trust manual, And the trust manual is something that comes with the trust. It's one of the smaller manuals of all the common law trusts out there. It's a rather brief and succinct explanation of the use of the trust. It's plain English. It's not written in legalese. We are very proud to have a very good manual, one that is user-friendly, understandable by just about anyone. And Matt Randall's going to expand on that today. So we are unmuting you, Randall, and we're making your video visible.
Yeah, I do.
So if you can click your video visibility on your end, it'll start that. And we'll go ahead and speak. If you can speak now, Randall, you are heard.
Well, good afternoon. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Here we are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, dodging hurricanes and typhoons, and you can see it's a beautiful day outside, and it's great to be back.
Our wish to see the hurricane miss you was fulfilled, I believe, yes?
Oh, we get pretty dumped on, but we didn't get blown away.
There are other things to be blown away by.
Yeah. Listening to me is one of them. Okay, hold on. I got some interruption here. Start my video. And okay, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me, Tanzan?
I can hear you loud and clear, and I hope everyone else can. If you can't, be sure to check your audio.
All right. So, you ready for me to go?
Go, go, go.
3, 2, 1. Okay, why did these things start? Well, around 1500, basically in England, the king owned all of the land, and he was a divine right king. Obviously, we know most of the history of that. And the people then were not allowed to pass their land down to their children and so on. So what happened is whenever they died, the king would take the property back and he'd rent it out to somebody else. So it was kind of a bad deal. The kings were pretty oppressive, as we all know. We have a new king in Washington, I think. Bad king. Anyway. So anyway, then they figured out that they would go to their neighbor and ask him if he would set up a contract, if he would go into contract, if I would go into contract with Tanzan, say, Tanzan, I would like you to look over my property and basically take title to it so that I can go and do what I need to do. And when I die, there's a contract there. So basically when I die, the contract holds that land for the next generation. And so it was called a uses then, and it's consequently become a trust, because the neighbor that you had to trust him that he would look after your property and make sure that the king wouldn't come and claim it. And he would look over your production rate or maybe help you run your farm, whatever it is that you were doing. So that's where it all started. And then, of course, it got refined more and more along the way. And what we've come down to now, or come up to now, is really ironclad trust document, contract document. You can use either word. It's very interchangeable. Some wording is different, but basically it's a contract between a number of people, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. But basically why it got started is so that people could contain and maintain and pass down their estate to their heirs. There was no ability to do that in those early days with a king, because the king would just take it back. So we're now at that point where we can separate the legal ownership from equitable ownership. And so the trustees basically take over the legal ownership of the property or the assets within the trust, and the creator or grantor has the equitable interest in the trust. And we'll talk about more about that later. But basically, the trust takes your assets and separates it out. And when you've separated it out, you've separated it from your name to the name of the trust, then you have basically limited the liability factor. So if you create a liability, those assets are protected because they're not in your name. So it's not going to go very far. So that's the basis of that origin. And it just gets refined more and more. The Constitution of the United States was a contract between certain people and the people of the colonies. That was a contract. It's like a trust. The Declaration of Independence was like expanding on that trust origin and making it happen. So we have that separation of ownership. That's like we have Congress and the House of Representatives to separate it out, separate the whole process out so that each one is a counterbalance to the other. And then now we're obviously dealing with the new Supreme Court nominee and a new president. So we'll just leave it at that, and we'll go more into what the advantages are of a trust and why would we want to do that. I mean, I had a couple of clients and they say, well, you know, I only have so much. And so I say, well, you know, if you only got $200, just keep it in your pocket. You don't need to have a trust. But if you have $200,000, then think about separating that out of your name. You have the equitable right to it, and you'll get to use it, or the trust will basically use that for your benefit, reinvestment or buying and selling, etc. So with that introduction, let's move on. Okay, what are the advantages? Okay, we're going to protect the resources. So it's not in your name anymore. And so it's on its own. It's held by, for your sake, for your benefit, by trustees who have legal title and you have equitable title. So it protects all the resources that you have in your estate. And this trust is an irrevocable discretionary trust. So it means that you can't take it back, and the trustees have the right to distribute those resources to the beneficiaries depending on what their need is. And we'll talk about that later. Okay, handle the daily details. There are two ways about it, and we'll expand on that. But basically, most couples get a trust. They're retiring. They don't really want to do stuff anymore. They just want to relax. So the trustees can do the daily details, or one part of the couple wants to step in and, you know, have a finger on the process of the trust. So they would become both grantors can become general managers. In fact, I just was putting a trust together this morning. There are two grantors and multiple beneficiaries and two trustees. So we have that in process right now. So there's a lot that can be going on, especially all this One is if you have a substantial estate, you want to straighten it out, not have it in your name in case you get incapacitated or whatever. And then the other one is, we all hear about this RV exchange. So that's one of the places that you would put this exchange into. You wouldn't want to take it in your own name, because then it's all in your pocket and it's a lot of pocket space. So anyway, the trustees, or you as general manager, say you're the grantor, you can be the general manager, and the trustees, or you can leave it all up to the trustees and they can take care of it. Now, trustees need to be compensated in some way or another, and you as manager can be compensated that way too. All right, now let's move down to the next one. It says reduce or eliminate probate. Basically, when all your assets are in the trust, there is no probate. I believe that probate is only for an estate that's $200,000 or more. I'm not sure about that, but I remember my mother's estate, and she had less than that in it, and it didn't go to probate. They just cut a check and gave it out. So if not reducing, or if not eliminating, it will certainly reduce probate. I had a client the last day or two, and she wanted to keep some in her own name, and she wanted to put others in the trust. I said, fine, it's not a problem. Keep what you want for your own, that's in your control, and put the rest in with the trustees for them to protect it. And, certainly the trustees are going to listen to you. If you're the grantor, trustees are going to listen to you and say, okay, how we want to set this up. And you may already have an established retirement fund or an investment portfolio, and you can shift that at your desire to either go all into the trust or some of it. Now, sometimes the investment portfolio or the investment people will maybe give you a hard time, and you just have to take, whenever you do that, you have to be just adamant that you want to have the title on the investment portfolio or whatever you have to be in the name of the trust rather than your name. And the banks, if you have stuff in a bank, you have to go in and have to take your trustee, and you have to go into the bank and say, we're shifting this investment portfolio or this bank account from my name to the name of this trust, the ABC Trust. So that means that you've taken most of your assets and they no longer belong to you, but you have the equity involved. It's like, well, I'll skip that. Anyway, and then provide flexibility. So it does allow the trustees and you to really move things around and brainstorm together, look at different resources, look at different investments and what you'd like to do. And for the sake of the argument, let's say the RV happens and you have these major funds, then you as manager or trustee would go out and you would dictate, you would have the trust invest this portfolio in any number of ways. That's totally up to you and the trustees to work it out. And it's very simple. And there we go. That's the beginning of it. Next slide. So here we are. We talked about separating legal and equitable ownership, and that's the basis of this whole thing. That's where the uses from 1500 came from. They wanted to separate legal and equitable title so the king wouldn't be able to take over the land. So the ownership is basically in the hands of the trustees. They have legal title to the asset, but they are under fiduciary responsibility to make sure that you, having equitable title, have the benefit of that equity. As far as the date of when you establish a trust, it's basically when you've decided. Let's say you have listened to one of these seminars and you say, I want to create a trust. Well, okay, just remember that date and then you'll be gone. Hold on one second. Okay, so basically the day you decide to do it is the day that you're going to use to establish the trust. And that would go equally when you file for an EIN number for the trust. You're going to use that date. It's usually the month and the year. Okay, the trust, of course, has legal title and control of assets. And that's the beginning of it. That's how it starts. And you go from there. And obviously, the trust must be used for honest endeavors. If it's for illegal endeavors, it can be invaded just like any illegal purpose. Okay, next. The trust indenture. Okay, so this is where you have the evidence that there's actually a contract in place. Gives you the date, gives you the fact that it's an irrevocable trust, and it's a discretionary trust as well. It's irrevocable and discretionary, and what that discretionary means is that the trustees have the ability to, let's say there's 4 beneficiaries, but one of them needs to go to school, or one of them has this disease or has to be taken care of. The trustees have the ability to give more to that person than the rest. In other words, let's say it's non-discretionary, that means that trustees have to give out an equal share to each beneficiary. Where if it's discretionary, that means that the trustees can favor one beneficiary to take care of their needs and then come back and do more. Now, at the end of the life of the trust, then it's all given to the beneficiaries on just non-discretionary, but a pro rata basis. Okay, and the most important thing, and I have to remind my clients, is, and I'm reminding you, is that not only do you read the trust manual a number of times, you need to read the indenture a number of times to make sure that you begin to understand it. And what happens is some of my clients don't read it thoroughly, and they don't read the trust manual, and so they're always calling with all these questions, or are getting emails that are 2 pages long, and what do I do here and what do I do there? And I'd say, okay, go back and read the manual and read the trust indenture and come back to me with what you found, see if you found some of the answers in there, and I can turn it around from there. Okay, next slide. Okay, putting property into the trust. Okay, it's either a gift or an assignment. If you do it as a gift, you have to be cautious of a potential gift tax. But if you assign it, what happens is let's say you have a portfolio worth 200,000 and you have a house worth 200,000, you can assign both of those into the trust, and what you get in exchange is beneficial interest. So it's considered a non-taxable event. So you don't have to worry about taxes happening. Or it can be a sale or an exchange. In other words, like kind. In other words, a trust could exchange the $200,000 portfolio for something similar that's also worth about $200,000, and so there'd be no tax there. Same with the sale. A lot of people sell their house, say for $250,000, and they have so much time to go out and find something else of equitable, same value, and then they can buy that, and there's no tax on that exchange because it's basically even. Okay. Okay, duration of the trust. It's basically 21 years plus lives and being. Okay, this is a little complicated, but what it means is it's not just 21 years from the date you date and sign the indenture. It's whoever's living now who is in your family. So you might have children and some grandchildren. So if they're alive when you put this in play, then it goes from you to the children to the grandchildren. And then, obviously there'll have been some trustee changes, et cetera. There may be some beneficiary changes, but then it goes along. If there's no more, after that, there's no more lives in being from when the trust was founded, even though there may be more great-grandchildren, et cetera. So then at some point the trustees have to decide, and the beneficiaries would all decide whether we want to just close this trust down and everybody gets a share of what's in there. A lot of, especially with the wealthy, is the beneficiaries get so multiplied, so many beneficiaries, that after that period of time, the trustees say, I think we should just give all the beneficiaries a pro rata basis of all the assets in here. Then if they want to create a trust and go take their share and now do a new trust, then they can start all over. Okay, next. Key people. Okay, a creator, grantor, interchangeable, always. Person that says, I want to create this trust. And so that's the grantor. Can be one or two people, can be three people maybe that want to create a trust. They pool their portfolio and they say, okay, we want to be the grantors or the creators of this trust. And they put it all together, create the trust. They choose two trustees, co-trustees. There's a first trustee and a second trustee, but basically they're always co-trustees. Now we have a setup where we have one trustee and then you have a successor trustee, but that has to be named right up front. And the single or the sole trustee can't be a sole beneficiary. There's no separation of legal and equitable title there, so it won't work. So there must be, if you're a sole trustee for a period of time and you have a successor trustee, then you must also have more than one yourself as a beneficiary. And of course, the beneficiaries are the people receiving the equitable title. It could be you and your partner. Let's say if you're a married couple and you put in so much, you would be the primary beneficiaries. Or you may have children and you want yourselves and your children have a certain percentage, and the percentage is entirely up to you. You can, if there's just the two of you, you're probably going to be 50-50 beneficiaries. If you have two children, and then maybe 25%, etc. So it just depends on what it is you want and how you want to establish your portfolio within the trust to benefit multiple people in your family, etc. Okay, next. All right, units of beneficial interest. What's the difference between stock and units? Well, stock can be bought and sold, no problem. Units have to be assigned to somebody, and they cannot be assigned to anybody else unless they're first given back to the trustees. So the units are just your equitable interest in the trust asset, but it can't be bought and sold, and it can't be taken away. There's a whole clause, we call it the spendthrift clause, but basically it's to keep errant children from overspending, and from having beneficiaries try to sell their units. So what happens is the trustees take those units back from that wayward beneficiary and reassign it, or wait until, let's say, the beneficiary has created a liability. The trustees can take those units back and keep them within the trust until the financial crisis or liability has been taken care of, and then they can reestablish that unit of interest. And of course, we just talked about it earlier, how it's given on a prorated basis at the end of the trust. So in the beginning, when it's all alive and working, it can be discretionary. More can go here, more can go there. At the end, it all goes out. The next thing I can't see, but it's I think it's unrestricted distribution. That's the discretionary trust. That's part of what we do. Is the clause in there says this is an irrevocable discretionary trust. So the trustees have the ability, the discretion to help beneficiaries who might have more need for it, and some beneficiaries might not. And so they have the ability to give that out to where the need is, rather than have to do a pro rata basis. I mean, a lot of trusts are non-discretionary, and that means at the end of the year, everything goes out, goes whatever your equitable interest is, that's what you get, and they don't have any choice. They can't keep it in the trust. They have to give it out. Whereas in ours, it's the trust has the ability to keep that portfolio and keep it going and not have to give it out. Okay, next.
Okay, everybody, we can open up to questions now, and there are 3 ways that you can ask your questions, 2 of which are available if you are logged into the video on your smartphone or laptop or computer, desktop. Those 2 ways are that you can click on the raise hand icon, and that raises your hand, and we can click on you and then open you up to the microphone to let you speak verbally, or if you type into the chat box your question. And then, of course, those who have called in by telephone, press *9 on your phone, and that raises your hand, and we'll answer you as we can go through and pick you up one at a time. Right now, Randall, we have in the chat, Lady P asks, can another trust be a beneficiary?
Sure. Yeah, anything can be a beneficiary.
That's a short answer.
Yes.
You want to
I don't know
expand
how
on
to
what
expand on
can
that.
be and
Yes.
what cannot be?
Well, I think you can make anything a beneficiary. Some people are putting humanitarian projects as beneficiaries. Some people have, they want to create a little memorial for something. They, so it's numerous, can be pretty much anything. And as long as it's not feeding the negative side of life, then you're probably going to be fine.
There are even people who've made their cat a beneficiary.
Sure. Classic is some of these incredible, valuable horses are made beneficiaries, or so that they can be taken care of.
Okay, we have a question from Janet, who's raised her hand. And Janet, you are unmuted and you are on the air if you would like to ask your question.
Oh, hi. Hi, Tanzan. Hi.
Can you speak up a little louder, please?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, just as loud as you can, please.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a question on, I think you answered the one about the beneficiaries. Can you change the beneficiary midstream? I have two sons that are, that I'm not sure, even a percentage of a large, huge amount would be significant. And according to the trust manual, you have to keep these people informed. So once I inform the beneficiaries, I mean, you can't really change them, right? So how can you?
Wait, Janet,
Yeah.
that's not true. The beneficiaries can be changed, and the percentage of equity to the beneficiary can be changed at any time by the trustees.
Really?
And the grantor.
Okay, because I thought once you, that's the nature of the irrevocability. I thought once you have the beneficiaries listed and they know about it, you can't really suddenly change
not
them.
True. It's not true. You can change percentage, and the beneficiaries, some beneficiaries may die. Some beneficiaries may not want to have anything to do with it, so it can be changed. And the grantor has that ability to talk with the trustees and say, I want to change the beneficiaries of this trust. I mean, after all, it's the grantor's trust. He can't take the assets back, but he can certainly ask the trustees to do certain things that allow for transition to happen. If you have, like I said, you have a wayward son, then you take the units back until he straightens out, or you trust pays for rehab or whatever is necessary. So yes, that's always changing. Everything changes. The grantors will pass on, the trustees will pass on, the beneficiaries will pass. It's all always in flux.
The other issue of concern, according to the trust manual, there's a great emphasis on the grantor and creator. First of all, I thought you were the creator since you created the trust. But the grantor, for one instance, was used simply to establish an EIN number, and then I was told that the grantor is no longer necessary. And yet in reading the trust manual, the grantor's almost in every paragraph and has constant input. So is there a kiss off of this grantor? Is there another type of grantor? Like you said, you can have more than one. The role of grantor seems to be so dynamic and so important that you should have the grantor doesn't kiss herself or himself off once once you sign the documents at the end, that they're very viable and involved in this trust in other ways. Can you tell me, Randall, just I mean, are they or are they not part of this trust after they kiss it off? And how are
Absolutely.
they?
Yes, they are. They've relinquished control. They've given up control of the trust, but they certainly have an influence. And in the minutes, they go to the trustees and they say, "Dear trustee, this is what I would like for you to consider." And trustees, of course, have the final word, so they can say yay or nay. But typically, the trustees, I didn't create the trust. I wrote the trust. You have decided to create a trust, and you use my writing to do that. It's just a document. You, as a grantor or as a trustee, are the one that's going to take care of these assets that are in the trust. And so you're working together as a team, basically. Sometimes there's an estate that's big enough that you might want to have three trustees, but it doesn't mean that you as the grantor don't have some say or some ability to request something to happen.
But I thought you pick a grantor off the streets, quote unquote. Don't want to mention who said that, but then you're not going to have an involvement with that grantor.
Of course.
So my grantor just gave me an EIN, and that's it. I don't expect to involve her. But shall I include another grantor? Shall I be searching for a grantor, or shall I include myself as grantor?
Why don't you include yourself as trustee?
I am trustee, yes.
Well, then why would you need to be grantor? It can be anybody off the street to be the grantor that just signs the date. It says, on this date, I have created this trust and I want Janet and her associate to be the two trustees, and the beneficiaries would be whoever.
But somebody off the street, Randall, you don't involve throughout your trust life.
Yeah, exactly. The grantor basically can be left aside. He has no other role than to be nominee grantor. If you go down in the Caribbean and you get an offshore trust, basically they're going to get a nominee grantor. He's going to make the indenture happen. It's going to be filed, and the trustees, whoever it is, and the beneficiaries will then basically be dealing with the trust, not the grantor. Okay. Sometimes the grantor, the grantors are usually the people that want to be involved, and it's their asset that they're putting into trust. So it just depends. It's not a cut and dried situation, and if it's a nominee grantor, basically they're not going to have a play in the field of the trust. And if you are putting the assets in, then you can be a grantor who, as a grantor, doesn't really have anything to say, but you're going to be appointed by the trustees to be the general manager. And so then you will be dealing with the trustees on a daily basis or weekly basis or however it's set up.
But you can't be all three, right?
No. Well, you can't be the only all three.
No, I was going to be a partial beneficiary to protect the assets. But I still don't understand the players completely in these things because, like you said, Randall, they change so much.
Yeah.
There's so much dynamic. I just don't know if I'm setting it up correctly. Is there somebody that can help you optimize the setup of your trust?
It's all set up. And if you have questions
you want to change things,
you have questions about how to run it, then you can consult with me as long as you're paid for the trust. Okay. Up and up, then but it's basically your initiative and your consciousness that's going to make this trust happen. So you get a nominee or a friend to be the grantor, and then they create the trust, they put the date down, they file for an EIN number, and then it's up to you and the beneficiaries to make this whole scene and play happen.
Now the trust the trust manual says you have to alert with your trust minutes or something in the very beginning. You have to notify who the beneficiaries are. You have to notify them.
Yeah, it's in the trust document.
It should. I would prefer not to until I know how it's
You have
properly.
you have to have at least one beneficiary written down. It's just the way
No, I understand.
the law is written.
I have 3, but I don't want to notify them yet.
You don't have to notify them right away, but you need to put them down.
Yeah, I
If
put
you're
them
going
down.
to create a document that's legal, you have to have a list of the beneficiaries somewhere.
Right, but I don't want to notify them and then have them expect this money, and you know what I mean? Just
Fine, don't notify them. I mean, but
do
then
anything.
that means you're going to keep all the assets in the trust. Are you going to let it go, or are you going to pay these beneficiaries what you want them to do, or are you just going to keep it all for yourself and the trust?
I want to be able to understand the workings of the trust, how to use the humanitarian funds, how they benefit from that humanitarian fund, because they shouldn't be getting the humanitarian funds. I just want to know just how it works before I alert somebody to this wealth, which may change. So I want to be able to work the trust first, get to know how it operates, who else I can add as more competent beneficiaries, how I can work the trust before I alert the beneficiaries as to, you know.
You don't have to notify the
year or two.
beneficiaries right away. You don't have to
Okay.
notify the beneficiaries right away. You have to work with the trustees to get the flexibility and the stability of the trust moving in the direction you want to. Then
That's
in
what I
your
want.
timing, you can notify these beneficiaries that they
Okay.
are beneficiaries. You don't have to tell them how much or whatever, but it has to be written down somewhere to make this a legal document.
Right, but even if you assign 0.1% of some significant wealth, and yet you don't know how it's distributed on the humanitarian side, you just need to know how these things are going to play out before someone's assigned or notified of funds that may or may not manifest.
What's got to be played out? The fact is, you have beneficiaries. Let's say like I had clients this morning, and they are going to have each 50% beneficial interest, and then they want the rest to go to humanitarian purposes. And what's going to happen, those humanitarian purposes will present themselves, and then you can give that particular project some funding, as much as you would like to do, because you and the trustees are in charge. So these humanitarian purposes are to support any humanitarian project that you want to. Doesn't have to be.
Can they be beneficiaries? Can an LLC be a beneficiary? Can
Sure.
a trust be a beneficiary? How about a foundation?
Sure.
Can a foundation be a beneficiary?
Absolutely.
See, I just don't know how to best set it up. That's really where I'm.
Okay.
So once it moves and operates, then that'll make more sense to me. That's okay. Well, thank you, Randall, and thank you,
Okay.
Tamsin.
Sure enough. Thank you, Janet.
Welcome.
Thank you, Janet. And
You're
why don't
welcome.
you do some homework and figure out more specifically what your questions are for your particular trust, and privately send them, like tomorrow, to Randall, and he can help you sort it out more, But your questions thus far have been interesting for everybody else.
Well, how about on the board, relating to the board, if I can still ask questions? Anybody else online?
Yeah, we have a lot of other people lining up with a lot of questions.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
maybe if you think it would be interesting for everybody else, you can put it in and we'll see if we can get to it.
Um, okay.
Okay.
Sure, I can come back. Let everybody else answer.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. And on the chat, next we have Brittany. Says, is this considered a common law trust or statutory?
Well, it's certainly not statutory, and you have a choice. We kind of stay away from the common law trust because it's gotten a bad rap, but natural law trust works, but it is based in common law or on common law, which comes from England. So this whole country is based on common law, although because the government has got their finger in all the pies, a lot of stuff is very statutory. But it doesn't mean the trust can't give to any statutory process.
And Brittany, we might also say if you want to review the section on law in the ebook, it goes over for a couple of pages the different forms of law and how this trust complies with them. All right, so then we have Truby. Suppose I want to open a captive insurance company to protect all of my business interests in the trust. How would I give the trust ownership of this insurance company?
Well, you would probably have the insurance company make the trust a beneficiary of the policy. I'm not too well versed in insurance law, so it's really hard for me to go there. But
Well, I think she's talking about the actual ownership of the company itself, not just the policy.
well, the trust, I would suggest, like anything, when I tell my clients about, you make the trust an owner or member, like an LLC or another company. Let's say you do start an insurance company, you can have the trust be one of the owners. Or if it's going to be a corporation, then you give so many shares to the trust. Does that help?
I think so, in which case would units of beneficial interest be given in exchange?
No, because the trust is going to be the owner. Yeah. And so then the company would be one of the beneficiaries. Yes.
Okay. Lady P says, is the compensation for the trustee taxable?
Yes.
Okay. And Dennis says, can you be a trustee and beneficiary?
As long as you're not the only trustee and the only beneficiary. Yes.
And Titol says, can I transfer the banking assets income from my LLC into the trust? If so, how?
Well, I would suggest that you make the trust an owner or partner or member of the LLC. Then what I did a few years ago is I had an LLC which I used as my storefront. Talk about a storefront and the back office. So the LLC, the trust was a member of the LLC, and so after all the write-offs, then the trust receive any potential profit.
For those from other countries, LLC stands for Limited Liability Company.
Could be a corporation, could be, whatever you use in the countries that you're in, and the trust is a member or receives benefit from that business.
And the rest of the question is, are there potential tax benefits of doing this?
Sure, the trust doesn't have any tax liability. It goes out to whoever it goes to. if there's any tax liability at all, it would go to the beneficiaries and or to um, the equitable partner.
Okay. Paulette asks, got to love the trust. Fear will block the flow of this abundant blessing. Let's take time to do it right and do our humanitarian service with love and joy.
I'm in for that.
Okay. Jimmy Dean says, can a storefront business be placed inside of a trust, and should the business be an LLC first?
Not necessarily. I just told you that I had done that a couple of years ago, and then I decided to stop doing that because it was like I didn't need that LLC as a storefront. I could use the trust as the storefront as well as the back office.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very optional thing, and it's how you want to see it happen. Let's just say you got 5 different businesses that you have a good attachment to, and so in US, let's say you've got them all in an LLC, you got 5 LLCs, then you make the trust a member or owner for whatever percentage you feel is appropriate to all 5 of those LLCs, or even a corporation. You can give the shares to the trust. So just depends on how you want. Like if they're already established businesses, then leave them where they are and make the trust an owner of it. I have a client the other day that's we had to figure out a way to get around, because to convert the LLC was too expensive, and to make it the trust and owner of the LLC was a fair amount of money, and she didn't want to do that. So we figured out another step that she could go through, which wouldn't cost her as much.
Okay, we have a question from area code 450. You are unmuted and on the air. Area code 450.
Hi, this is Marianne.
Hi.
Hey, aloha, Marianne.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm not
Good,
blind.
good. I'm still listening. I'm still there. I have one little question that pops up. Can the trustee be attributed units of beneficial interest? Or is that a conflict?
You would be a beneficiary?
It could be?
Yes.
And the trustee could be?
Trustee could be a beneficiary as long as he's not the only trustee and he's not the only beneficiary.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Sure, Marianne. Aloha.
You're welcome.
That's it. Au revoir. Merci.
Okay.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Merci.
Au revoir.
Merci.
Okay. Dennis says, are stepchildren classified the restrictive family members? Therefore, they could not be a trustee with you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now you've lost me. Can you ask that question again, please?
Yeah, Dennis says, are stepchildren classified the restrictive family members? Therefore, they could not be a trustee with you?
You need to have at least one non-related trustee. It's just keep it simple. Don't try to manipulate.
Stepchildren are considered related?
Absolutely. Blood, marriage, or employment.
Okay. Or same household?
Yes.
Okay, so answer. In other words, stepchildren could not be co-trustees and qualify.
I wouldn't go there. I would strongly suggest that you need to have a non-related trustee somewhere in there. It's not that can say no to a decision. That's what's important. That's separation. The tendency is the families tend to just say yes to everything, and that's not the way you want to go.
Right. All right. Paulette asks, how do we make payments to humanitarian projects in foreign countries through the trust? By wire transfer?
Sure, wire, check, however you want. When you do that, when you give to the humanitarian projects, I would suggest you make a minute, and you and the trustees sign it that you have made a donation to a certain project, wherever it is, and note it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Janet, we're back to you. You have more questions?
Yes, I do. But you know, always have questions, right, Randall? Okay, for when you go to the bank, and you take your trust documents with you.
Can you speak closer to the microphone, please?
I don't know. Is this better? I'm under some metal roof.
That's better, yeah.
Okay. When you go to the bank and you take your trust documents with you, what do you tell them in terms of what type of trust? So you don't want to say you're setting up a common law trust, because that's a no-no. Although we may be moving into that direction, it may be more acceptable. But what do you say to them? Is this, I have a natural law trust I'd like to set up, or I have just a trust?
I would go into the bank and I would say I would like to open up a simple checking account for this trust. I have the paperwork here. It's an irrevocable discretionary trust, and you can take a glance at the certain papers. And what else do you need? And make sure you're the trustee, or you take a trustee if you're not.
Okay. And
Randall, can I recommend that those words not be used that she mentioned, natural law and common law?
Yeah, I would. No,
you want the bank to say yes.
You don't have to define exactly, Tanzan. You don't have to define that process. You just say, I want to open up a checking account for this trust. It's an irrevocable discretionary trust. That's all. That's
right.
all.
Those are the words to use.
Private, irrevocable, discretionary trust.
Okay, and in your trust manual, you mentioned the board several times.
Well, that's your trustees. That's just your trustees.
Oh, okay, because I've heard of stories where people have made up a board of fictitious names. I mean, what exactly comprises the board? And you're saying just trustees? It's
yes.
Just you and, you know, somebody had dog names once, and
fine.
Basically
and they're gonna get busted for fraud. I mean, come on, let's get real. You got to have real people as trustees. They got to be able to identify themselves, because when you go to the bank, they're going to say, "Where's your ID?" And what's the dog going to do? Give him his doggy tag?
No, but I mean, as far as the board goes, the board's not going to show up at the bank.
The board is one trustee. Can be one trustee. The board is just a term we use for the trustees who control the legal title to the assets in the trust.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a string of 12 people. It just has to be one trustee.
Okay, and Tanzan, where do I get all the back Randall calls? There's like 8. This is the 9th. And so I wasn't able to see that on the notification anywhere. Is there some
it's
access?
in the newsletter. There are 2 ways to do it. One is that the entire list of trust webinar links have been in every newsletter up to the present one, or up to the last one. And then down in the resources section near the end of the newsletter, you see where it says all BIC related YouTube videos. And there's a single link that is our channel on YouTube, and you go there and all of them are there.
Okay.
And I recommend everyone go through those, because Randall's been giving out let me share with everyone something that late last year in 2017, we were considering bringing on another speaker, and she's expensive. She wanted to charge thousands of dollars, and she wanted to charge every webinar participant, I don't know, $50, $100, $200, $300 per session, and she's one of the great teachers of trust knowledge, but Randall is too. And after a lot of negotiation, long story short, we ended up just going with Randall for free for the time being. So this is a tremendous value of unprecedented knowledge. Randall may look like a Hawaiian relaxed surfer guy, but I'm telling you, his knowledge is at the pinnacle. This flexibility, you don't find that in every other common law or even statutory law trust out there. The flexibility, the ability to maintain the kind of essential protocols to make it stand up like a building that's going to stand there like a pyramid for thousands of years and not fall down, not be knocked over, not be invalidated. So, yeah, this knowledge that Randall's been sharing at no charge is a tremendous value. So thank you for asking about those links. I recommend to everybody, if you haven't seen the previous webinars, click on those links and go look at them. You can always type in Brilliance and Commerce on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in Brilliance and Commerce, and it'll come up that way too.
Okay, and that's wonderful. I tried that one. That didn't come up for me. So, but I'm also wondering. Let's see, can I subset here? Okay, so you answered that. Statutory staff. If I purchase a home through the trust, do the beneficiaries have access to that upon my death, or how does that work, Randall?
Yeah, they're the beneficiaries, of course.
Okay, so I mean, it's not separated into real property and certificates or something, right? So I was just wondering, maybe they just have units.
Well,
it has
they
nothing
have
to
a
do with the
percentage.
real property.
They have a percentage to whatever asset is held in trust. Could be a house, could be a portfolio. Please, everybody, do not put a car or a boat or an airplane in the trust. That's always creates a liability. So you have a house, you have a portfolio, and you die or pass on, and the beneficiaries will get a percentage, whatever has been stated in a trust document by the trustees. You may have a list with the trustees. The trustees have a list for future beneficiaries. It's all flexible, and it's all up to you and the trustees and how you want to make this happen.
Well, now I have a sting question for you, and you too, Tansen. The sting question is, if you've changed and corrected your status and you're private now, a lot of people, we have to approach that because more and more people should be doing that, should be changing, should be surrendering their
Okay, that's a different seminar,
status.
Janet. I think I don't want to talk about that necessarily here.
No, but how do you pay taxes? You're not paying any taxes to any of
Janet,
this stuff.
Please, let's not talk about that. If you want to go private, you can still be a trustee or a beneficiary on the trust. It's up to you.
I know, but
It doesn't matter whether you're private or public. It's you in small letters or capital letters. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you and the trustees are flexible, and you create the trust. You mold the trust the way you want to have the end result continue.
But it's a little different if your status has changed.
I don't want to go there, Janet. We've had this conversation before, so let's just leave it there. And if you want more indulgence, then we'll talk about it in private.
Okay, that's fine. I'm all for that. And
Okay, thank you, Janet. We do have a lot of other people to get to, so
Sure, no problem.
you can
Okay.
come back later
Thank
if we
you.
still have some more time.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have Anthony. You are unmuted and you're on the air if you would like to ask your question. Anthony? Okay, looks like Anthony disappeared. All right, we have a question from Carrie in the chat box. Hola all. My learning on best ways to contribute to humanitarian projects is to do with through a foundation, even setting up our own foundation that then the projects are done through. What do you think of this? Would you put the foundation under the trust? Thank you.
I would make the foundation the beneficiary of the trust. And I would have the foundation or the project have a prospectus or a portfolio that it would give to the trustees so that can be stored with the trust documents.
Well, Randall, what about operating the trust as a foundation?
That's fine. It's fine. Keep the trust in the background. Let the foundation do the work, and then whatever money is in the trust can be fed or donated to the foundation out of the trust. What the most important thing is that the trust can give away any part of its asset portfolio to charity at any time and anywhere. And my suggestion is to have the trustees, if they do that, is they see the prospectus or they see what the foundation is, what they're supporting, and then it goes from there. I have a gentleman that I'm working with, and I got 60 projects that are already vetted and ready to go if the RV happens. And so there's numbers of people all over the country that are putting these humanitarian projects together, and they're going to support that through the trust. The trust is going to have their foreign currency, and then when it goes out, then it goes to their projects or whatever amount you want to go in that direction.
Okay, Tito asks, are you familiar with filing of 1099s on behalf of the trust, or can you recommend a source familiar with filing 1099s? And my first comment, Randall, would be, Tito, did you read the ebook on the trust?
Right. Nobody's required to file anything. So let's just leave it at that.
Benefits of this trust.
I have one trust business that I've been filing for, and at the end of the year I take it down to my tax consultant and he makes that a 1041, but gee, by golly, there's no tax due because it was all given away to charity by the end of the year. So that's how it works. That's what you do is you take this trust and use it to protect the assets that are in there, and then those assets can go out. The distribution of those assets can go out at any time to any place, and it neutralizes everything. And then there's no need for the trust to file if you don't want to. And I'm probably pulling a lot of triggers with that one, I'm sure, but this whole IRS thing is, I'm not going there.
Okay, for people in other countries, a 1099 is one of the income tax forms. Okay, Catherine asks, I plan to create 3 humanitarian projects of very disparate natures with no overlap, really. Would it be more advantageous or safer to create multiple trusts for some reason?
Only if you want to. Well, all right. If you're creating the projects yourself, at some point maybe those projects will want to be put in a trust. But for the time being, all you have to do is create the projects, and then the trust can feed those projects. Like I said, I have 60 projects on my table. I'm not going to give support all of them, but there's 2 or 3 in there that I feel is really critical to support. So that's what I would do. And then the trust that I work with would give that project funding source.
Depends on how big your assets are, too. It was known in the early 90s that the Rockefellers had some 7,000 of these trusts.
Sure. Well, and they're all involved with statutory business. So that makes sense. Even all these high, all of this stuff is all statutory for most of these people because they've been involved with the corporate world. So we're not involved with the corporate world, and we're on the private contract side. And as long as we follow the basic rules of contract, then we're fine. Keep it clean, write everything down, and let the flexibility of the trust document allow you to go in whatever direction you need to go in, as long as it's legal.
Paulette writes, Hawaiian relaxed surfer guy, thank you.
You're most welcome. Mahalo a nui loa. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anthony says, how will filing a UCC1 and or becoming an American national sovereign affect me as far as obtaining a trust? And then he says, okay, got it, with the reply to Janet. So if you want to comment, Randall.
You can be whatever you want to be, American national, but a trust is, even if you're even if you've gone private and you've discharged all of that stuff, you still are a walking being. And if you have all your money in your pocket, then there's no separation between you and that asset. Doesn't matter what dog tag you wear, you're still attached to it. Whereas the trust would take that asset and hold it for your ideal, let's say, the projects you want to do. And so that's how it benefits. It doesn't matter whether you're a private citizen, whether you're Australian or Canadian or Asian or European, you still separate your assets so that the ownership is separated and secure.
Okay. Anyone else? Randall, you have other comments you want to make?
No, we're going to, next month, we're going to cover the other half of the trust manual, but I encourage everybody, if you have our trust already, that you read again the indenture and the appointments section and all of it, and the minutes, and also the short manual that I do, and download Townsend's book as well. Read all of that. It's simple. I mean, it's complex, but it's really simple.
You have simplified it. One of the great talents of known geniuses is the ability to take something complex and make it understandable to the layman.
I tend to be cryptic.
Well, it's been effective. Actually, in my humble opinion, you can be more strong in your asset protection if you are in plain English rather than legalese.
Sure. You're not trying to hide anything. You have a simple contract. I mean, that's the uniqueness of the U.S. is that the right to contract is right there in the Constitution. Shall not be denied. So you have a right to contract for anything and with anyone, and that's unique. A lot of countries don't have that.
Yeah, and the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, is the highest law on the planet as far as what is actually in operation behind statutory systems in every country in banking and government.
Right.
And that's basically a set of rules on contracts.
Sure. And that's why we went to Switzerland and Rothschild Bank and went to New York and DIC is because BIS actually, not BIC, was to serve these bankers and say, we know that it's just paper. And so we're filing all this paperwork on you. And that's what we did. So you can go and create a UCC paperwork for your trust if you want, and put that UCC in front of the trust. And if anything happens within the trust, then they have to, anybody suing the trust has to look at the UCC, and there may be a UCC for, $10 million in front of it. And so they have to pay that debt first. That's how the UCC works.
Randall, we have another question from Anthony. He says, you say not to hold a boat, car, risky assets, etc. in a natural law trust. What do you recommend we hold risky assets in? A subtrust, and then have the subtrust placed into the BIC trust?
No. Unless you have a $500,000 Ferrari, I wouldn't put a car or a boat or anything. Just have it in your own name or create an LLC to hold it. But it's not worth it to put something that can create a liability in with an asset that you're trying to build up and be stronger.
Okay. Catherine asks, is it possible to see a sample trust document before we purchase this product?
No, particularly don't want to give the paperwork out unless you pay for it.
Yeah, you've given the manual, correct?
The manual's there, and if you are afraid to bite the bullet on the whole thing, then start with a $250 payment plan, and then you'll get an abstract, which is about 6 or 7 pages and allows the trust to be formed, basically, but you don't have a full document where you can go into a bank. Ordinarily, you can't go into the bank with that and open up an account. You need the whole indenture and all the appointments. It used to be you could use the abstract to open an account, but bankers have changed in the last few years, and they're really reticent of, they want to see the whole document.
Okay. PA asks, please refresh my understanding. If I exchange into an LLC, how do I then transfer into a trust afterwards?
Well, I would suggest that you transfer or exchange your currency now before the exchange happens, and then the trust will be the recipient of the exchange. Rather than deal with significant sums in an LLC and try to move it into a trust, I would have you consider taking that currency out, which is worth minimal at this point in time, except what you paid for it, and have the trust be the owner of the currency.
If he's talking about foreign currency that's going to revalue, then yes. Then when it's revalued, if there is any capital gain, it incurs in a non-taxable entity.
Right.
SD, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, Dieng, I guess, says, can you give guidance on how a trust can acquire a loan for real estate for a project? Thanks in advance for sharing this liberating knowledge.
Sure. You and the trustees walk into the bank and put your plan on the desk and say, we'd like to do this and this and this. And the bank will say either yay or nay. You have to present a really proper prospectus, I guess, to do that. But as long as the trustees are there to do the request, then the bank is going to base it on the merits of the ability for the trust to pay off the loan and probably the credit ability of the trustees.
Yeah, if the trust hasn't built up its own credit score, then it would have to go on co-signing of the trustees'
Right.
personal.
Right.
Very good. That's about all we have at the moment.
Good. I hear the wind rustling and I see the waves in the background.
Okay, everyone. We have our next webinar October 10th, 2018. So tune in for that. Watch the newsletters. And these are excellent questions. They've been a very, very good overview. Randall, thank you. You gave a nice rainbow, Hawaiian rainbow of a spectrum of topics today under the whole overall banner of the Trust Manual.
Well, we got another half to do, so we'll have more for next month.
Yes. What, you want to give a little preview of that?
Not offhand. I haven't really looked at it yet. I may change it. I may do something totally different. Depends whether I've got water on my brain or not from surfing.
Okay. Dieng asked one more question. Do all trustees have to co-sign on the loan?
It depends on the bank, I would say. Maybe, maybe not. Every bank is different. Some banks don't want to work with trusts. You have to shop around. But I think if you have a bank relationship already with a particular bank and your trustees are trustworthy and financially stable, I don't think that would be an issue. And you can always, let's put it this way, let's say you and the trustees go in and you put a down payment, you want to buy property, and you go in and you put it in your own name, and then you can assign it to the trust. So that's a possibility also. It would have to be re-recorded with the county, but it can be done.
We have blessings from Paulette. We have thanks from Catherine. We have thanks from Carrie. We have a thank you from Dieng, S. Dieng. We have lots of people pouring in their thanks. You guys are the best. From Anthony. Janet says, I'd like to ask one more question. How are you feeling, Randall? You want to do one more?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. All right. Janet, you are on the air.
Okay, thanks, Randall. And thank you, Tansen. For the trust to establish credit, how long does it take, you think, until you can get some sort of credit score with them?
I have no idea. It depends how much cash flow there is through the trust and what kind of paperwork you take to the bank, and or when you apply, I guess you can apply online to get a credit score, and you'd have to feed it so much information. If you get in the beginning, you get a small loan, the trustees get a small loan from the bank, and it goes into the trust account, and then it's paid back to the trust, and then all of a sudden it has a credit score.
Janet, did you see that section on our credit repair guy, Anthony Galas, in our last newsletter?
No, I mean, I was reading it, yes, but I didn't go I didn't contact anyone, no.
Well, his expertise in credit would apply to a trust as well as to an individual. So he would be the one to ask about how to build up credit quickly for any kind of entity.
Oh, that would be great. And
Yeah.
the other question I have, Randall, is should you set up one? Sorry, I'm in a gym and I can't help the noise. But would you set up one account per currency? And
That's entirely up to you. I'm not. Haven't even gotten there yet. I'm waiting.
I was told.
Not even thinking about it, but yes, you can. You can. Some people want to set up a trust for each currency. Some people want to just go and do the currency through one trust, and then they open up 3 accounts. But it doesn't matter. However you want to do it, it's very personal, and you need to play that as you see fit.
Okay, and I was told the foundation should be separate, not under the trust. Do you see an advantage of? I mean, I have a humanitarian foundation for profit, but because it's humanitarian, there is no taxable event. You still think it would be more protected in a trust?
No, leave the foundation alone on its own, and then the trust can feed it as it would like to.
Great, that's great. Thank you so much, Randall, and thank you so much, Tansy.
Thank you, Janet.
Both of you were terrific. Thank you. We'll talk, Randall.
Okay, Janet. No problem.
And Randall, we have one more question from PA. Says, thank you, Randall. I do not have anyone who I would trust to be trustees. Would I still set up a trust?
Well, you need somebody that you can trust. Again, this gets down to options. You can get a nominee grantor. You could be a trustee as long as you're not the only beneficiary. So,
or only trustee.
Or only trustee. So it's something you have to consider. And I have a number of clients that have that issue. They just don't feel they have anybody that they can trust. And I say, well, at some point you got to trust somebody with something, keep talking, and if you put it out to the universe that you need somebody that you can trust to help you do this, then the universe will probably send somebody your way, and you have to surrender to the fact that, people are inherently trustworthy, and allow it to happen.
Anthony says, will you still be offering trustee services in the future?
Tanzan and I are working on that. Yes.
Want to just say we'll send an announcement when it's ready?
Yeah, it's still in process. It's in the early stages. We have to discuss what we want to do. It would be a cost factor. We wouldn't do it without a charge, and you have to decide how important it is for you to pay somebody to be a trustee, and how you could dig down and find friends or relatives that would help you work that on a nominal basis. I mean, in the early days, if we didn't have a lot of work to do, my partner and I did a trustee service, and we would offer that, and we would say, okay, as long as we're just attending this portfolio, looking at the results and storing them in the trust document, then we would say, okay, we're going to have a trustee meeting, and we would go to a really fancy restaurant. This was back in San Francisco, and we'd say, you're going to have trust business, and then you're going to buy us a really nice dinner. So it was payback that way. It can go all the way from that to significant sums for, dealing with most of the trust business. It just depends on how far you go and how lucrative you feel. I'm sure that when the exchange happens, Tanzan and I and our little thing will our trustee service will be probably called upon significantly, but we can do that because we're going to have a group and we'll be able to offer that service and give you the best kind of service you can need for having a trustee.
Yes.
So if that's about it.
Well, everyone basically, we have a lot forming. We have cryptocurrency programs. We have asset management, wealth management, expanding in partnership with Lighthouse Law Club and Monaco Management Group. We're associated with Mark Emery, and we're all in partnership with providing a variety of trust-related, asset protection-related, and wealth-building-related programs. So please stay tuned, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the newsletter. So, well, we have one other question from Lady P. She says, can a foundation or other entity be a trustee?
I don't know that I would have a foundation be a trustee, because that in itself requires a board, and so I don't know how you would play that. I would kind of suggest that I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't suggest that. So, in other words, the trust should be independent of the foundation.
And it would depend on who is signatory on it, I guess, and how much responsibility they're going to accept.
It would, but the idea is for the trust to be supporting the foundation or the projects. So rather than it be intimately involved with the trust, I would keep them separate.
The question is, are you still associated with Mark Emery? Doesn't he offer trustee services? If you go through his trust, which is very similar to ours, yes, he has a foundation in Panama. In fact, he requires that they be the trustee. He doesn't offer the choices like we do. Someone says, can I put the LLC into the trust?
You make the trust a member or an owner of the LLC. Keep them separate. And you have the trust be the owner or a member of the LLC. And then any profit after expenses of the LLC then would pass through to the trust.
You were saying one time like up to 98% might be reasonable?
Well, yeah, one of my tax accountants said that this was in Hawaii. So in Hawaii, they wanted to see a human being be one of the members of an LLC. But he was fine with 2%, and the trust took the other 98%, and we were flying in the air.
And you don't want to do 100% because it might raise too many eyebrows?
Well, like I said, in Hawaii, they want to have a human being as at least one member of the LLC.
Yeah.
So, no, I wouldn't make 100%. Put yourself in there, especially if you're the grantor or even a trustee or a beneficiary, then you be that 1 or 2%. I have a client that doesn't want to do that much. She wants to make the trust a 50% owner, and she wants to keep 50% for herself. So that's fine too. It's all your choice. Again, this is very flexible, and it's your choice on how you want to make this happen, and keep it simple.
Anthony says, what about family members as trustees?
One of them, maybe. But like I said, you want to have a non-related trustee, blood, marriage, or employment.
In addition.
Yes.
Yeah.
No more than 50% should be related.
Right.
Now, some of the people are doing one trustee and a successor trustee, which is fine because they're not the sole beneficiary at all. In fact, most of it's going to the rest of the family. And then they make a distant family member a successor trustee. Well, that's okay because by the time they pass, the trust will be established, and then they can bring in the successor trustee, and then he's got to name a successor or co-trustee.
Okay, Randall, what do you think? That's about it for, well, let's see. Wait a minute. One more just came in. Catherine says, Randall, do you create other biz entities for your clients, such as LLCs, corporate sole, and so on, or do you work with another lawyer in this capacity?
No, the LLC you can get whatever state you're in. Let's see, what state am I in? I'm still conscious. Okay. Where is I going with that? I got confounded.
You've been making arrangements for other entities for people sometimes.
I was doing corporate souls for a while. I think there's other people out there doing corporation souls that have done more research and more law research on that. So I don't do that. And I know what I was saying is every state on the mainland, on the Union anyway, they have their own LLC law, and it can be done online. They charge $25 to $50, or you can have some company do it. They charge you a couple $100, but you can do it yourself, and it's a simple 1-page or 2-page statement that creates the LLC, but you have to remember that that's a statutory entity. So you're going to have to pay excise tax and file a return on that. Same with a corporation.
Well, there's more thanks pouring in, Randall. Catherine says you were in a state of bliss. And, Anthony says, you guys are the best. Can I buy you both a boat after the Currency RV?
How about a beer?
Okay. All right. Well, if that's about it, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Yes,
Randall.
thank you, everybody. I really enjoy your questions, and I hope you get as much out of this as I do every week, every month. So we'll see you next month.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha.